Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for the first of what I hope will become nightly, kind of 5:30 or 6 p.m. Live streams where I talk about all the latest transfer talk and news, always starting, of course, with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur. The plan is to do morning uploads, as I tend to do, try and get them out as early as possible for you guys, and then to go live both on YouTube and TikTok around 5:30, 6 p.m. Give an opportunity for you guys to ask any questions about what the latest transfer rumors are, and also other kind of Premier League news and thoughts, and in general, just try and have a bit of a chat, give you guys a say, really. I mean, it's Monday, isn't it? So it tends to be a little bit slow on Monday, but there has been some kind of Tottenham news coming out. One is an interview with Hugo Lloris, where he was asked, because he's at the Club World Cup with LAFC, he was asked about Tottenham winning the Europa League. Hugo said this: "I'm really pleased. I'm really happy for the club, for the people at the club, for the players. We ran many, many years after this trophy, and finally they got it. And I think they deserve it. Hopefully it will make their shoulders a little bit lighter for the future. And I think it's also the moment to build on this success for Spurs. Even if I'm not a Spurs player anymore, I still follow the news, the team, and the results." That's what I love to hear. Ex-Tottenham legends still following the club, and Hugo Lloris undoubtedly is a Tottenham Hotspur legend. It goes without saying. Yeah, he's right. I mean, that whole group of players, if you think about it, the likes of Harry Kane, Christian Eriksen, Dele Alli, Vertonghen, Alderweireld, Dembele, Dyer, and of course Lloris, to name just a few, they all worked their nuts off to try and win a trophy down the years. None of them did it. And then pretty much just after they've all left, other than Sonny and Ben Davis, we get it over the line. David Clark in the comments says, "Hi from Leicester, full steam ahead on the Frank train." James McGrath says, "Good evening, how are you?" Optimal Noise says, "Afternoon, Barnes." Hi, guys. Maria says, "Hey, Barnaby, good evening, mate." And Alexis says, "Thanks, Barnaby, for the content when all of us are biting our nails." Well, what are we biting our nails on? Signings, I guess. We did get Matthias Tell through the door over the weekend. I guess that's one that we expected as Tottenham fans. But yes, I think it is time for us to get a few. Maybe we'll have a few bombers, some unexpected signings. Hugo Lloris was also asked about Spurs sacking Ange, and did it surprise him? He said this. He said, "No, nothing surprises me in football. But at the same time, it is hard to say something because I'm on the other side. I don't know what happened inside the club, so it's really hard for me to judge. If they made this decision, it's because they believe there is another option which is better for the future of the club. What Ange Postecoglou did was just remarkable. He brought the Europa League trophy. He brought a lot of joy to the Spurs community, a lot of pride as well. And we all have to be thankful for that. I'm not here to discuss about the choice of Spurs' new head coach. He's a well-respected manager. He did an amazing job with Brentford. Now, like every coach, when you arrive at a new club, there's a new environment which you have to embrace. But if the club decided to appoint him, it's probably because they decided it's best for the future." For those of you just joining, guys, just reading out some quotes from Hugo Lloris, who was asked about Tottenham winning the Europa League and about Ange being sacked. Let me know in the comments, guys, any of you Spurs fans watching. Where does Hugo Lloris sit among the kind of legendary goalkeeping figures from Tottenham down the years? What are your thoughts on him? Let me know. Maria says, "I said Barnaby, that's your nickname." Yes, I have many, many nicknames, but that one can definitely be added to it. No problem. Martin Mattis asks, "Hi, Barnaby, will Brian and Mbuemo come to Spurs?" So let me know what you guys think. My instinct is that he probably won't, and that maybe this is being used as a kind of bargaining chip by Brentford. Maybe even during the conversations for Thomas Frank, Brentford said, "Would you mind kind of leaking that you've put in a bid for Mbuemo because it'll raise the money that we can get for him?" That's me being cynical. However, there is, of course, a chance that Thomas Frank just thinks he might be the perfect fit for what he wants to do at Spurs, in which case, yeah, I mean, as long as Brentford don't say, "No, you're not allowed," like contractually, you're not allowed to take anybody else, then yeah, it would be a good fit, and maybe it could happen. The reports so far are that Spurs have bid more than Manchester United, and that might well, be difficult for Man United. As I said this morning on this morning's video with Sir Jim Ratcliffe looking to kind of tighten the purse strings wherever he can. It may well be that that Tottenham, putting in a bigger bid might be trouble for United. David Clark says, "Got a feeling that Manchester United will offer Mbuemo 250 grand a week because, let's be honest, they paid an over-the-hill Eriksen 330 grand a week." I'm actually not sure about that Eriksen number, but what I do know is Under Jim Ratcliffe, like I was just saying, they are paying a lot less in transfer fees and wages. So I'm not sure they will go that high from Mbuemo, 250 grand a week. Although a report did come out last week saying that could happen. But I've got some Man United fans, and they're all talking about how those kind of numbers are just not happening anymore. Delta Bar asks, is Mbuemo a 70 million pound player? It's really difficult to say in the modern day what reality money is. I think 70 million is pretty much the equivalent of what 35 million was just a few years ago. So you'd probably have to say yes, I guess. Godfrey Drummond answered my question, about where Hugo Lloris sits within the pantheon of Spurs great goalkeepers. He says Ditchburn, Jennings, Clements, Parks, Lloris, and Torsvet. Would you have Torsvet down as a legend? He did win an FA Cup, I suppose. Alexis says, if he joins, meaning Mbuemo, it would be awesome to see Goldbridge choke on his nonsense. That's for sure. Hugo Lloris did go on to say some more about Tottenham. He said they had a really hard season. They had a lot of injuries as well that affected the team and performances. And I think in the second part of the season, it looks like they decided to go all in for the Europa League. They made it, and you just have to congratulate them because it's another way to go to the Champions League. At the end of the day, I don't know. If you finish 10th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and you get a chance to win a trophy, on the other hand, it's just an amazing achievement. I was part of a really competitive team for many years, and the target was to reach the top 4. But at which price? We could not find a way to win a cup, a League Cup, or even a Europa League Cup, but we managed to go and get the top 4 for many years. I don't know. It's all about the optics of the club. I love Hugo Lloris. He just talks sense, doesn't he? I mean, I personally think what he's saying there is, I think he's saying that Postecoglou made the correct choice, in his opinion, to prioritize the Europa League, to get that trophy over the line, to get the monkey off the back of the Tottenham, of the club and of the players and of the fans. And it's suggesting to me that maybe Lloris thinks they made a mistake in sacking Big Ange Postecoglou, but who knows? Marfin in the comments says, hey Barnaby, it's horrible having to wait for news about transfers. Any expectations on when we might get some concrete transfer news about who we're getting? I think the reality is, at this early stage of the transfer window, unless you're Man City, of course, because Man City, they started their big rebuild in January, and that's when they got their new sporting director in, and they've just been kind of picking off the players that they want. And of course, they pay more wages than everybody else. Unless you're Man City, look, if you look even at South Woolwich down the road, their fans are going absolutely nuts over the fact that they still haven't bought a striker for like the 3rd window in a row. And a lot of it is just about, the reality is that they're all trying to get the numbers down at the moment. All the sporting directors trying to do deals. They're all trying to just get the fees that are being asked down. So we are going to have to be a little bit patient. That's the reality of it. But there's no doubt in my mind that they are trying to get things done. That is for sure. Lazy 801, I think this is relevant to, we were talking about Mbuemo, asking what are Manchester United paying Cunha? I would imagine Cunha's on probably between 125 and 150 grand a week, I would have thought. That would be my guess. Guys, 15 likes so far on YouTube. Please do give this a like if you haven't already. The more likes we get, the more Spurs fans will see this in their suggested video. So if you haven't pressed a like, please do. And if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, please do press that subscription button. And you'll also see in the description box below a link as to how you can vote for the Spurs Kings TV Tottenham YouTube Creators Awards. I am nominated for a few, I think 3 or 4. So if you haven't voted for me on that and you'd like to, please do go to that link in the description box below. Caveman says, afternoon Barnaby, hope you're feeling better, mate. Love from the USA. Yeah, I said on my video this morning, I've been ill all weekend. I'll be honest, I'm not feeling great, but I'm determined to try and do these live episodes when I can this week in the evenings. And I'll also be playing around a little bit. I've done this one at 5:30. I'll probably try the next one maybe at 6 o'clock. See when it's best for you guys getting out of work, whether you can watch. Let me know in the comments where you're watching. But yeah, if I can catch you guys when you're on your way home from work or when you just get in from work or whatever. Obviously, I do stand up as well, so it's quite difficult to do much later than probably 6 o'clock because I've got to get out for gigs, but we'll see what happens. Enal Basong says, hi, Barnaby, what's the stance from Mbuemo at the moment? Like I said, I think there's a little bit of jiggery-pokery being done with Brian Mbuemo. It would not surprise me at all if he does go to Man United and maybe Spurs are just kind of trying to raise that fee on behalf of Brentford, but we'll see. Blake says on TikTok in a comment, thank you, mate, says, do you feel that Levy will leave, sell the club, or move over as a lower shareholder or continue? I think there's no chance of him leaving anytime soon. They're looking for I think Spurs are looking for a minority investment at the moment, and the ideal for Levy is that he then gets to stay on. One thing I will say, and this will probably get me pelters, but I think when people are giving Levy abuse now, because Levy got so much abuse before for never having won a trophy, I do think you have to caveat now the fact that he has won a trophy as chairman of Tottenham, a major trophy, a Europa League. I think you have to caveat that. It doesn't mean that you have to think he's suddenly doing a good job or a great job. I think optically he still does make some pretty terrible decisions, but also you do have to give him the credit for that. In the same way that you abused him before for him not having won a trophy. And the reality with Levy is, he did go against his instinct a lot this season in not sacking Ange Postecoglou when he was under a lot of pressure to do it. And he didn't. And as a result, I think that is why we did win that trophy. Just going back, Robert Yee is just talking there in the comments about, I asked about Hugo Lloris and where he stands within the pantheon of goalkeeping greats. Robert says, race is on. Vicario is full length ahead of Hugo. At this rate, Vicario will gain and move ahead of him. Hugo will be forgotten. Vicario will be remembered. That's the impact of winning a trophy. I don't know. That's an interesting take. I don't think. Listen, I think we've kind of probably, because Hugo did drop his levels in the last few years at Tottenham, that we probably remember that more than some of the amazing stuff he did. But I don't think it's quite as simple as you win a trophy and you're a legend and you don't and you're not. I think Hugo was our captain for many years, and he brought Tottenham. Hugo's one of the first big signings we made in what I describe as the kind of newer era. Not the first. I would go back to probably like the likes of Van der Vaart or even as far back as Edgar Davids for that. But in terms of us improving as a club, Lloris was kind of one of the first in his prime players that we got through the door, I would say. Daniel Baldy says Man United will challenge for the Premier League next season. Wow, that is a strong take. What makes you think that, mate? Let me know in the comments. David Clark says Man United have players they'll offload that will bring them more money than the players that we can move out of the door. I don't know. Have Man United got that many great players they can offload for money at the moment? I'm not sure they do. Whereas Tottenham, I think, are in a decent position. You think of the likes of Richarlison could get some money for Spurs. Obviously, Romero is a possibility if he chooses to leave. Although, as I said this morning, at the moment, the reports on Romero that the clubs who are interested in him are not willing to pay the £70 million minimum that Daniel Levy is requesting. And Godfrey Drummond says, in terms of goalkeeping greats, I forgot one more, Alexic. I don't remember him. What's his story, mate? I don't remember him. And Greeny says, hey, Barnaby, don't forget Bill Brown, double-winning goalkeeper. There we go. Back to 1961 for any of you youngsters. Back when Tottenham really were the greatest club in the land. Marvin asks, is Eze realistic this summer? I haven't heard anything about him. He is on the list. He is definitely on the list. I think all the reports at the moment are that Mbuemo is kind of the top target, followed by Semenyo and Eze behind them. But I think the difficulty with the Eze situation is that his release clause is £68 million. Another player that Tottenham have been linked with again today, Manchester United forward Marcus Rashford, is being eyed up by Spurs, Newcastle and some other clubs as he prepares to leave Old Trafford. He remains out of favour with Ruben Amorim. He doesn't want him there. And Aston Villa remain open to signing him permanently after his loan spell, but they look set to face competition for him from the likes of Spurs. Let me know in the comments, do you think Marcus Rashford could work for Spurs under Thomas Frank? What I will say, I've mentioned it before, but Thomas Frank's teams, whenever they've kind of given Spurs trouble down the years, and don't forget, this season we did do the double over them, quite ironically, but they've always given us trouble down the channels. That's how I remember. I've been at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium a few times where Brentford have given us real trouble down the channels with Visser, with Ivan Toney running them, of course, with Mbuemo. And Rashford, if put in the right kind of system where he can run the channels and use his pace in behind, could be a real threat. But as I've said, and I will stick to this, I am wary about Tottenham signing players. And I'd add Grealish into this group. I'm wary of Tottenham signing players who are on massive wages elsewhere and might deem Tottenham to be a lower step on the ladder. I don't want players to come just for a big contract. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm looking for. So that's how I feel about Rashford. But let me know in the comments how you feel. David Clark says Lloris probably the best keeper since Pat Jennings. Pat Jennings was an amazing goalkeeper back in the 70s. Let me see. What else are you guys saying? Greg Slint says, we were talking earlier about how much Cunha is on at Man United. Cunha will be on 200,000 apparently. He was on 120 at Wolves. He did actually, that's a good point. He did sign a new contract at Wolves just a few months ago, so he probably was on about that. Andy Ing135 says, are we still allowed to say mate post Ange? Maybe it should be Ven, the Danish for mate. Look, I love Ange, and I'll still be saying mate. And actually on TikTok, FolkDans123 says, do you think it was the right choice to sack Ange Postecoglou? Listen, I was very torn at the time. I'm still a bit torn, but I think when you're a football fan, you have to kind of remain as glass half full as you can and just look forward. So I'm now I've taken my my being conflicted and putting it into positivity towards Thomas Frank, and hopefully he gets the players in that he wants and that we'll be able to push forward. Guys, before I keep on going, we're at 34 likes on YouTube. Let's get as many likes as we can. Please do give me a like. And also, if you are stumbling across this on TikTok, please do send your questions in on TikTok as well, and I will answer them. And FolkDans123 says, I'm a Liverpool fan. Okay, well, thank you for joining in, mate. Really appreciate it. And what did you think of Ange Postecoglou? Let me know. I'll also be going into some other Premier League transfer news later on, including Liverpool stuff, so do keep an eye open. Athankosi Gazekwa says, between Eza, Semenyo and Mbuemo, which one will you take? I'm watching in South Africa. Well, thank you so much for watching and for your comment. Really appreciate it. It's a good question. Who would I take between Eza, Semenyo and Mbuemo? I love Eza. I have been saying more recently, I really like Semenyo. I like his physicality. I mean, they've all got good physicality. I guess, and I know I'm sitting on the fence a bit here, but there's also a case for saying Mbuemo, because Mbuemo has played for the manager before, and you'd think maybe that would allow him to kind of slot right in incredibly quickly and easily. But it's a tough one. I love Eza's skill, and obviously he's improving all the time, playing a lot for England now, and also scored a goal in an FA Cup final. But I'm probably going to say the surprising answer and say Semenyo at the moment. I really like him. David Clark says, Eze isn't realistic because Palace haven't changed their stance that they want the total £68 million up front. That could change, though, as the summer goes on, if you think about it, because his contract is, I could be wrong, but I think Eze's contract runs out next year, is it? Certainly it will have run down by a year since last year when we were interested. I'm talking about Mbuemo and Semenyo. Sky Sports reported today that it remains to be seen whether Spurs will follow up their initial talks over a deal for Bryan Mbuemo with a bid, or whether they'll move on to Antoine Semenyo. Mbuemo is understood to be intrigued by Spurs, with Thomas Frank having just been appointed as their new manager. But one source says he is still leaning towards joining Manchester United. Another report says Spurs have intensified their pursuit of Bournemouth's dynamic winger Antoine Semenyo, as Brentford ace Bryan Mbuemo continues to prioritise a move to Manchester United. Spurs have held further discussions with Semenyo's representatives over the past few days and are growing in confidence of striking a deal. Semenyo's agents have been in regular contact with Tottenham, who are now weighing up a formal approach. It is understood that Bournemouth will demand a fee of at least £60 million. And folks, Dan, sorry, just on TikTok there, followed up his comment, said, I'm a Liverpool fan. My brother-in-law is a Tottenham fan and an English guy. Okay, well, there you go. Good to have family members who are Spurs fans. My dad was actually a Liverpool fan, so I should really support Liverpool, but because he wasn't around, my stepdad made me support Spurs because I grew up in London, and my stepdad was a Man United fan, and he hated Arsenal so much that he bought me a Spurs shirt and made me support Tottenham. That was when I was about 5 or 6 years old. Tony Darko asks this: if Levy was your pet dog, would you train him to manage the club better, or just have him put down and get a cat? Genuine question. I would train him to make less weird decisions for the club, like being so involved in the Super League, or furloughing the staff, or sacking a manager at halftime of a game, or sacking a manager just after we've won a trophy. I wouldn't have him put down. I think, I'm not Levy in and I'm not Levy out, or ENIC in. I'm more like, be careful what you wish for. And actually, let's ask FolkDans123 on TikTok, because he's a Liverpool fan. A lot of Liverpool fans hate FSG, and they've won the Champions League and the league a couple of times. So, what do you think of Daniel Levy as a fan from outside? I think a lot of football fans who aren't Spurs fans think Levy is an incredible businessman. I've certainly heard Man United fans suggest that they wouldn't mind Levy being their chairman, because obviously they've got the Glazers mixed with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's sacking all of their staff. So I just think it's very difficult to get an idea of who the perfect chairman would be. I'm not particularly sold by the idea of being owned by a petrostate and all of the kind of human rights issues and disgusting stuff that would bring, the same way that Newcastle are owned by Saudi Arabia. So that's kind of how I feel about Levy. I just think it's a difficult one until I kind of find out or have an idea of who a replacement would be. it's not really that easy for me to suggest that I would, in your instance of your question, Tony Darko, have him put down if he were a dog. David Clark says, things are going to change at Spurs. Joe Lewis has installed Peter Charrington, the ex-CEO of Citibank and advisor of Tavistock and Enoch, and lives on the Tavistock estate. Pressure is on Levy big time. Yeah, I have heard about this Peter Charrington appointment. I'm not sure if we know exactly what the case is in terms of the hierarchy there. Obviously, Donna Marie Cullen has left. But there do seem to be things happening in the board. Also, we've been told for quite a long time now that we're expecting Scott Munn to leave, and that hasn't been announced as yet. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. Folks Downs 123 says, he's the Liverpool fan, says, I don't hate FSG, but I don't know enough about this. Okay, fair enough. But David, thank you for your message. Robert says, Paris seems like he wants to keep the band together, talking about Steve Paris, the Palace chairman, and Eze, obviously. Risking Gay going for free by keeping the band together. Yeah, that's right, because Gay's Gay's contract, will run out next summer. Elise money probably helping them. That's true. Elise, how good is Michael Elise doing at Bayern Munich? Oh my God, what a player. And some reports as well today that Bayern Munich are interested in Eze as well. Guys, we're nearly up to 50 likes on this YouTube stream. If you haven't pressed the like button, please do press it on YouTube. The more likes we get, the more people will see this live stream in their suggested videos. Also today, Diego Simeone, the manager of Atletico Madrid, was asked, would you be interested in Christian Romero? He said, do I want QT Romero? Obviously, he is a great player. A lot of managers in England, when they're asked about other players, they say, I won't talk about players from other clubs. But Diego Simeone, being classically Argentinian, does not give a what? And was just like, yeah, of course I want him. Well, it still remains the same. Unless Atletico Madrid or Real Madrid or anyone, actually, I saw a report that maybe Liverpool might be interested in Christian Romero this weekend as well. But unless any of them come in with the kind of money that Daniel Levy would accept, then it is basically, it's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. He's still got 2 years left on his deal. He signed that deal, and he is a proven winner. And you're not going to get a proven World Cup winner, be him a centre-back or not, for less than £70 million. That's how I feel about it. Optimal Noise in the comments. Thank you so much. Does anyone think we should take Garnacho? He is on the list. He is someone who's being talked about within Spurs. And obviously Tottenham do have a really good history of having great Argentinian players. And of course, Pochettino is a great Argentinian manager. I like Garnacho. I think he's the kind of player who needs an arm around him. He's the kind of player who needs to feel like he's one of the most important players in the team. He doesn't get that at Manchester United. Amorim has seemingly washed his hands of him. And I think whoever gets Alejandro Garnacho will get a great player in the long term. He's already played at his age. He's super young. He's already played loads for the Argentinian national team. So, look, I think he's an exciting player. It's just whether Thomas Frank thinks he will pass his no dickheads policy. If you haven't heard about that, Brentford under Thomas Frank had what he described as a no dickheads policy. They would not let anyone come in the team who they deemed to be a bit of a dickhead. And it's fair to say Garnacho, although I don't have any direct evidence suggests he's a dickhead, he has kicked up a lot of a fuss at Man United. And we wouldn't want to bring in a player who's going to kick up a fuss early doors. David Clark says, we talked about Marcus Rashford earlier, so I wouldn't even have Rashford as our dinner lady. Ryan Law, thank you for your comment, mate, says, if Rishi was to leave, which seems increasingly likely, we need a strong striker, but who do we go for? Well, the striker market is incredibly small and seemingly getting smaller, and that's why, as I mentioned earlier, South Woolwich Arsenal fans are going absolutely crazy. Man United also trying to buy a striker at the moment, and Gyökeres, what Sporting are asking for Gyökeres is really annoying those two clubs. There aren't a great deal of strikers around. I think one of the reasons we got Matthias Tell over the line is because maybe Thomas Frank thinks he could train him into being a number 9. So on that basis, I'm not sure if I can really see us. I think we were interested in Liam Delap, but once he, like seemingly every young player, once he decided to join Chelsea, I'm not really sure, Ryan, where the other number 9s are. That we're really going to go in for. I mean, it just makes me glad that we got Solanke when we did, because I really think Dominic Solanke under Thomas Frank will get so many more chances. We'll put so many more crosses in the box from deep, and he's really good in the air and a really good first-time finisher. He was feeding off scraps last season, Dominic Solanke, under Big Ange Postecoglou. And I think he will score more goals and be given far more chances this season. But Ryan, let me know in the comments, who do you think we should go for if we're going to sell Richarlison? I mean, I also think it's possible that that Thomas Frank may think, we've got ourselves a really good pair of number nines in Richarlison and Solanke. And if my fitness regime isn't going to get the players injured as much as Big Ange Postecoglou's did, then maybe Richarlison will be available for more games. And they are two good number nines that you can rotate. And of course, Richarlison also can do a great job on the left, as we saw in those last 3 knockout rounds in the Europa League. So I don't know. Let's see what happens with Richarlison. There is talk that Everton are interested in him. Some other transfer talk. Spurs apparently are interested, along with Arsenal, Liverpool, Newcastle, in Brentford's Nathan Collins. That's according to Graham Bailey. And we talked about Vicario earlier. According to TBR Football, Vicario is highly placed on the AC Milan shortlist for a new goalkeeper. Max Allegri, their new manager, really likes the Spurs player. Spurs hierarchy have considered selling him, but new goalkeeper is not currently viewed as a priority this summer. That's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if Thomas Frank has come in and said that maybe he doesn't feel like Vicario, from what he's seen so far, is strong enough at dealing with defensive set pieces. One thing I will say is that Kinski, not as good a shot stopper yet as Vicario, but in terms of his assertiveness and his aggressiveness coming for set pieces, Kinski has got that over Vicario. And of course, they'll both have a clean slate. Excuse the accidental pun there. A clean slate when Thomas Frank comes in. But it'd be interesting to see what happens. Deltsabar says, I think Garnacho would be good. He's young and could do great under a manager like Frank, who develops talent. I agree. Frank has a really good background and history of making players better. And I think a lot of those young Spurs players will improve, and maybe players like Garnacho, but I think it'll come down to his personality more than anything. Alexis Portier says, does Jacob Ramsey want to join Spurs? The report that I've heard is that he was interested last summer. Obviously, Aston Villa haven't made it into the Champions League this year, so Tottenham would potentially be an interesting place for Ramsey. And the fact that we've had him on our list for so long might make him think that we're really, we properly want him to come to the club. Villa will probably need to make some sales this summer for PSR because they're so high on their wages to revenue comparison. They're in the 90s% wise, which is right up there, probably the highest in the Premier League. So Ramsey could be available for pure profit for Aston Villa. So if Thomas Frank likes him, we know Johan Lange likes him, then it could be a deal that happens. Who knows? But of course, there would be an English player to English club tax. And we'd probably have to pay a little bit through the nose compared to a similar level player abroad. Delta Bar says, I think the total cost for Marcus Rashford, transfer fee plus high wages, probably means there are better options. I agree. Daniel Baldy says, no European football for them means they would give their all for domestic cups like the Prem. Plus, talking about Man United here. Plus, they've been signing very good players in Cunha, maybe Mbuemo and Gyökeres. Listen, I think Cunha undoubtedly is a great signing for Manchester United. However, and I think I wrote about this on Twitter at the time, maybe, do Man United need another player who just jogs around when they haven't got the ball? When I've watched Manchester United over the past few years, no matter who the manager has been, they're just jogging whenever they've got the ball. They do not have the intensity required for the top level. And that's really why I think they struggle so hard to beat those teams, especially the ones who go to Old Trafford and play a low block. So look, Cunha will do some great stuff on the ball, I'm sure. Be interesting to see how he gets on with Bruno Fernandes, by the way. Bruno Fernandes is not the kind of player who wants to give away any of the the number one status within the club. And Cunha was number one main man at Wolves. And it is a doubt to me whether Cunha will get anywhere near that status at Man United, because Bruno is that man. And I wonder if they bought Cunha kind of thinking that Fernandes may end up leaving. But I just wonder with Man United, they need more players who are just going to put it in every week, 110%. And I'm not sure Cunha is one of those. Mokamiku Jane says, it depends on the Mbuemo decision, because at first he said he wants United. Listen, I've said this about Cunha as well in the last week or so. There are, of course, many, many footballers who grew up supporting Man United because Man United were the best team in the land during those days. So players like Cunha, who's been honest about that, and maybe it's the same with Mbuemo, they will want to choose Man United first. But also, if their family and their agents are smart, then they'll get in their ears and say, look, you go to Man United, there is a high chance, like a lot of those Man United players of the past, let's face it, 10 years, not many of them can you say, not many players who went to Man United can you say they improved and then went on elsewhere. You really cannot. In fact, you can say more that they struggled at Man United and then improved elsewhere. Scott McTominay being the perfect example of that. So, listen, all I'm saying is that if I was Brian Mbuemo's agent or family, I'd be saying, listen, just you be careful about going to Manchester United. You're not going to be the main man there. Everything is not going to go through you. And the fans get on your back very, very quickly. But let's see what happens. Randin, thanks for your comments. Says, honestly, was waiting for Garnacho reports. Really want Garnacho and Grealish to dominate the attack with Solanke and Mbuemo to strike. I don't think Jack Grealish is I don't think he's a wide forward for Thomas Frank, but I do wonder whether he would interest Thomas Frank as a number 10 possibility, kind of rotating with James Maddison. James Maddison, obviously, as we know, is quite injury prone. Is Jack Grealish the kind of player we could bring in and rotate as a number 10 with Maddison and Kulusevski, or moving Kulusevski out to the right? However, Jack Grealish is on absolutely ridiculous wages at Manchester City. He was bought for £100 million. He's probably on 250 to 300 grand a week, and he won't get anywhere near that at Tottenham. Would he be motivated to come to Tottenham Hotspur and really, want to change his career trajectory around? I'm not so sure. And it's a dangerous one as far as I'm concerned. And he's not young anymore. I think it's a lot less dangerous to go for Alejandro Garnacho, who still has a lot to prove, than to go for Jack Grealish, who's kind of been sitting on his arse for a year because Pep just clearly doesn't rate him. So that's why I'm a little reticent about Jack Grealish. But let me know what you think in the comments. Ian Ban says, good timing, listening in the sun in my back garden. Thank you for tuning in, mate. Really appreciate it. Giovanni, hello from Australia. Hi, Giovanni. I wanted to ask if there are any Australian fans watching or listening. How do you feel about Tottenham Hotspur as a club now that Ange has gone? I really feel like there are a lot of people who subscribe to my channel because Ange joined Tottenham Hotspur. So a lot of Australian people did. Are you, if that's the case, if that's you, are you going to stay as Tottenham fans? Or now that we've sacked Ange quite ruthlessly after he did such an amazing job, are you now reticent to support Tottenham? Are you in fact going to go the other way and hate Tottenham? I'm intrigued to know anybody's thoughts on that. Let me know. Giovanni asks, Sonny, stay or go? I've been quite consistent with this. Thank you for your question, by the way. If Sonny wants to go specifically, and if it's somewhere in Europe to what I would deem to be a big club, similar, I was saying it on my video this morning, similar to what Robin Lewandowski did in his mid-30s. He got a big move to Borussia Dortmund. He got a big move to Barcelona. Now, if Sonny gets a big move to a big club like that in Europe, then I would happily take 30 million euros for him, which isn't a lot of money in the current day, and say, Sonny, you've done everything for us. Thank you so much. If it's Saudi Arabia, I would be looking to double that because they have money, and he would, I got a pelter for this earlier for saying this, but he would be like the face of the league in Saudi Arabia alongside Cristiano Ronaldo. Do not kid yourself about how huge Sonny is as a player worldwide in terms of his influence, in terms of being an icon more than anything else. So that's how I feel about Sonny. However, if Sonny doesn't get a bid from somewhere that he wants, I would love him to stay. I think he could. I hope he gets a really good rest this summer. He's played far too much football in the last few years, and that's why he's getting injury prone. I'd like him to have a good rest, and he could be an excellent squad player for Spurs next season. He might even be a starter under Thomas Frank. Who knows? He's still the club captain. Obviously, Tottenham have got the South Korean tour coming up in July. So you'd think whatever happens, Sonny will be asked to stay around for that at the very least. And then I think it'll be interesting. A lot will depend on the discussion that Thomas Frank has with Son Heung-min when he joins the club. Geminini says Sonny will stay for the champions. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But I think Sonny's in a great position where he will be legendary status whatever he does. He can go wherever he wants. Obviously, he wouldn't go to Chelsea or Arsenal, but I'm saying he could literally go wherever he wanted other than that. And I think he's in a really good position. And if he ends up staying and he gets a good rest this summer and he comes back at his best, there still aren't many many better finishes than Son Heung-min around. And certainly not many that Tottenham have in their ranks at the moment. And Sonny is still a great person to have at the club to bring some of those young players through as well. You can't tell me that Matthias Tell isn't learning off Son Heung-min every week, and that Wilson Odobert isn't learning off Sonny. So I think Tottenham are in a pretty decent position on that front. Let's see what that happens. Robert Yee says, I'd rather use money that could cost for Rashford and Grealish for players that don't have the baggage. I completely agree, Robert. Thank you for your comment. I totally agree with that. Godfrey Drummond, thank you for your comment, says, would you send the likes of Devine, Donnelly, Dorrington, Phillips and more on loan this season? It's hard to say because I think, like I was saying about the goalkeepers, they all have a clean slate with a new manager, with a manager who's known to play young players. Donnelly had a great loan at Leyton Orient, as did the keeper at Leyton Orient as well, the Spurs keeper. Devine did well at Westerlo. Obviously, Phillips, I think, did okay at Stoke, and Dorrington played in that Scottish Cup final. So those loans seem to all be good. Mikey Moore, I'd be more surprised. I don't think it would harm Mikey Moore. I think it might benefit Mikey Moore to play some physical football in the Championship. But I also think that maybe Thomas Frank will like Mikey Moore. So maybe ask me that question again, Godfrey, in the middle towards the end of pre-season. But I think Tottenham will probably loan out a lot of their young players again. But for me, I've said it numerous times, but I'll keep saying it. I think Thomas Frank is hyper aware of the need for physicality in the Premier League, more so than ever in the modern Premier League. And some of those young players not quite bulky enough, Mikey Moore being one of them. So let's see what happens. Randint says, Eze and Semenyo are great, but for God's sake, we need experience. Think about maybe getting Eriksen back at Spurs, or even someone like, I don't really know. Do you have any ideas? Well, listen, I've had pelters for saying that I think if we were looking for a rotation number 10, then I would get Eriksen in, because people will say, oh, he hasn't done anything at Man United, but they never play him in the number 10 position. It winds me up. And I always text my Man United sporting mates, why don't you play Christian Eriksen where he's best, in the number 10 position? And they never, ever do. So I would be tempted to bring him in as a bit of experience, as a squad rotation option, as someone who can bring the other players through. It seems unlikely it would happen, but I would love it to. He's worked under Thomas Frank numerous times, and obviously it was only probably 18 months ago, 2 years ago, that he came back from his heart surgery to play for Thomas Frank at Brentford and was ripping it up in the Premier League. And that's because he played him in his natural position, in the hole, in the pocket, in the number 10. And yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that happen. We do need experience, that's for sure, but it's about treading the line, as far as I'm concerned, between getting in experience but also paying players who have had those big moves elsewhere and on massive wages. For me, the kind of experience we need is those kind of players we're talking about, Mbuemo, Eze, Semenyo, because they've got the Premier League experience where they know they can do it at that top level. But also they're not kind of 29, 30, 32 years old. But let's see what happens. We've been linked a lot with Jared Branthwaite. He's got experience, a couple of seasons of good, strong experience in the Premier League at Everton. Obviously, we were linked with Mark Gay, but he's apparently not keen on a move to Spurs. So I think the club are listening to you, Randin. I think they know that we need experience as well, but it's about treading that fine line. Some more reports from Spurs today. Brentford have, it's reports from Brentford actually, but it will relate to Spurs. Brentford have confirmed the departure of first-team assistant coach Klaus Norgard, as yet more staff leave the club following Thomas Frank's departure. Norgard is expected to join Frank in making the move to Tottenham Hotspur. He served as Frank's assistant for 3 years since joining Brentford from the Danish Football Association back in 2022. That can only be positive as far as I'm concerned. I want the manager, Thomas Frank, to feel as happy and comfortable as possible with his staff around him. And I think that can only be good news. Delta Bar says, I love Sonny, but I hope they get a large enough offer to sell him and reinvest. They're still building, and that's the smart way to do it. Yeah, I didn't really mention reinvestment when I was talking about Son, but I don't disagree with you, Delta Bar, and thank you so much for your comment. What else have we got here? We were talking about potential future chairman earlier, and Ryan Law says Elon Musk for chairman. I mean, you're joking, but honestly, that when I talk about not being Enoch and Levy in or out, the reason I'm not hard on them being out is because you just don't know. You might end up getting someone like Elon Musk, somebody who's so reactive and so unstable and does mad stuff and embarrasses your club. And I just don't want that to happen. I really don't. Guys, 170 of you watching this concurrently at the moment. Thank you so much for your support. If you haven't already, please do press like on YouTube. The more likes we get, the more people will see this in their suggested videos. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel, if you want a daily Premier League transfer news, always starting with my team, Tottenham, please do press subscribe. Really appreciate your support. Alexis Portia says, does Frank have a good set-piece coach? Good question. And yes, Brentford have been huge on set-piece coaches down the 7 years that Thomas Frank was there. They have brought a set-piece coach. He has brought a set-piece coach along with him. And I think and like to hope that Tottenham will be much stronger, both attacking and defending set pieces from this season onwards. Obviously, we had that great season when Conte brought in his set-piece coach and we were scoring set pieces all the time. But then, unfortunately, Ange didn't want a set piece coach. And I thought that was a mistake from him. Wendy and TikTok says we need to build up the Premier League, which have knock-on effect to attract investors. Yeah, talking about Spurs need to do better in the Premier League and then we'll get more investors. I agree with that, but also I'd say winning a huge European trophy will have only helped that as well. There is some talk, guys, that Tottenham may well have an investment coming in towards somewhere around the beginning of this coming season. So it'll be interesting to see whether that is the case. And if they do get some minority investment, then that could be huge because Levy has been honest about what he really wants is more cash in the bank that we can literally spend on players, because we're allowed to spend it with our PSL numbers, but it's about can we spend it on, can we get cash that we can actually spend, because we know ENIC and Daniel Levy do not put in their own money. Robert E has talked a bit about, I asked earlier about FSG and how Liverpool fans don't love FSG, even though they've won the Champions League and the Premier League a couple of times. Robert E says Fenway and Fenway Sports, that is, they just traded a Boston Red Sox player that had a £300 million plus left in this contract. Though Liverpool and Red Sox finances are operated separately. Connection between the Verts, Cost and Sox player traded. Yeah, I don't think they'd be able to directly drag that money over. And sorry if I'm kind of missing your point. But thank you for your comment. Ryan says, if we were staying with current Spurs, buy young, high potential forwards, I'd lean towards Vitor Roque. However, you're right, seems to be a bit of a striker drought. I can't lie and say I know a lot about Vitor Roque, but thank you so much. I will dig him out. And David Clark says, we were talking about Jack Grealish earlier. He says that Jack Grealish is on £300,000 a week at Manchester City. There has been some confirmation of Tottenham's pre-season friendly schedule. We are now going to play Bromley away on the 8th of July. That's pretty close to where I live. I might go and find out, although that might well be an under-21 game. And then we're playing on the 26th of July away at Luton Town. Then over in Hong Kong, we're playing Arsenal on the 31st of July. Then the 3rd of August, just a few days after that, in Seoul, playing Newcastle. Then the 7th of August, Bayern Munich. And it's only just after that, of course, that we have the Super Cup final against PSG. Has Talks Football on TikTok. Hi, mate. How are you? Says, come on, you Spurs. Yes, come on, you Spurs, everyone. I don't know about you. Let me know in the comments, but I feel like it's a really positive time to be a Spurs fan at the moment. We've got the monkey off our back of the trophy. Nobody can throw that at us anymore. Arsenal are more the memeable club right now and the memeable fan base because they haven't won anything for so long. And because for so long they were talking about how it's only about winning trophies. And when we were coming second and third under Pochettino and getting to finals but not getting over the line, they were like, oh, it's all about trophies. And yet now they have to be massive hypocrites and say, oh, it's not about trophies. And they're talking about how the Europa League is a second-rate trophy, and it just isn't. So I think it's a good time to be a Spurs fan. Alexis Portier says, what are your feelings on McTominay joining? I haven't seen any links to Scott McTominay, and I don't see why Napoli would let him go. He's always been a good player. I was so surprised why Man United fans kind of just didn't find him sexy enough as a player for them. He was always a workhorse. He scored vital goals for them. I never really understood it. But it just shows how Man United fans and the club just live in the past. They live in a previous time. And McTominay has really shoved that down their throat by having an amazing season at Napoli, being the MVP in Serie A and won a Serie A trophy at Napoli. And United as a club should probably come out and apologise as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely embarrassing. Wendy on TikTok says, I feel PSR has a negative effect towards the Premier League as European leagues don't have the same rules. It's a difficult one, PSR, because the big negative effect, as far as I'm concerned, with FFP and PSR now is that some of the clubs are just able to circumvent it by cheating. Chelsea being the prime example. Man City obviously have done it down the years over and over again. And, you know, Tottenham are a great example of a club who've tried to live by the rules and grow sustainably through infrastructure. And, you know, if it hadn't been for clubs like Chelsea and Manchester City being bought by oligarchs and oil states, then Tottenham would have won at least one Premier League trophy now. That's a fact, you know, because we came second to Chelsea. So it does feel sometimes like FFP and PSR is a little unfit for purpose. But I also think it still needs to stay around in some way. They're changing the format of it, aren't they? It's going to become more of a revenue to wage spending structure. Be interesting to see how that does, but it's supposed to come in relatively soon. So let's see. Cfowl says, a little behind on the stream, but would hate to see Vicario go. I think he should be wearing the armband. Thank you so much for your comment, Cfowl. I don't see why we would let Vicario go at the moment, unless we got an offer that was so high we couldn't turn it down. But I said it earlier when we were talking about him. it may well be that Thomas Frank wants a more commanding goalkeeper from set pieces. It's going to be interesting. Listen, when managers come in, they make their decisions. Let's not forget, when Ange came in, he made the decision. He wanted rid of all of those older players who had played under Pochettino. And that's why they all left. Dyer, Kane, of course, Lloris, to name but a few. So Thomas Frank will have his own feelings, and maybe he's made it clear early on in his discussions with Spurs that he wants a stronger goalkeeper than Vicario in terms of commanding his box. Maybe that's where the reports today of Vicario interesting AC Milan comes from. But I agree. I think Vicario is an important presence within the squad. He's one of our few players who kind of does try and lead from the front, shouts a lot when he's playing. I'm not sure I'd give him the armband. I've talked a lot about this. A lot of people don't agree with me, but if I was Thomas Frank, I'd be tempted to try and sit Christian Romero down and say, I want you to be the captain. I want you to show your leadership every single Premier League game and drag this club up by the scruff of its neck. But whether or not that will happen when Romero may well be interested in leaving remains to be seen. Kang Katangom, says, thank you for your comments. Says, Man United's Anthony is better than Jack Grealish, but English punditry destroyed Anthony's career. Moreover, Grealish was more expensive than Anthony. Well, I think they've both been quite poor. I mean, Grealish has won a treble at Manchester City, though, whereas Anthony just didn't do well at Man United, but he has done really well at Real Betis since being on loan there. So you can imagine that deal will be done relatively soon on a permanent for Anthony to stay at Real Betis. He's undoubtedly got talent, but in the Premier League, more than any other league, you've got to earn your right to kind of pull off endless tricks and stuff. And he was doing them without kind of having backed it up with assists and goals. And Man United fans, more than any others, especially at the moment, get really frustrated with players they paid big money for that don't do the business. And you've got to think about it. With Man United down the last 10, 12 years, they've had players way bigger than Anthony who have failed. I'm thinking particularly of Angel Di Maria, an absolute legend of Argentinian and European football, went to Manchester United for big money, and yet never happened, did it? Mark on TikTok says, why are you wearing a woolly hat? The main reason is because I have ridiculous hair at the moment, but also when I do green screen on TikTok, because of my ridiculous hair, it all goes completely invisible and stuff. I'm not using green screen at the moment, but I tend to do on TikTok, so I've just started wearing it for all of it, really. But thank you for your comment. I really appreciate it. And let's see what else you guys are saying. Meme Hook says, selling Son with a Champions League campaign ahead of us doesn't make sense. Play him with less running responsibilities and more central, and he will be golden. Keep him 100%. Thank you for your comment. Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not sure how well he'll do central in a Thomas Frank team. I think he wants more physicality in that number 9 position. But he has done a great job for Spurs down the years in the number 9 when required. So he definitely can rotate there, that's for sure. But I think a lot of it will depend on what Sonny wants. As far as I'm concerned, if Sonny wants to leave, then he should be allowed to leave. David Clark in the comments talking about James Maddison's injuries. Says 99% of Maddison's injuries are impact injuries with his ankles and his latest knee injury with that keeper crashing into him. So they're not muscle injuries like a lot of Spurs players. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, David. Thank you. I do think, though, we will see a difference this season under Frank in terms of the less intensity in the training and in the games. Listen, Ange was very transparent about how he just wanted the players on the pitch, be that in training or in the games, to never stop. That was his thing, wasn't it? We never stop. Well, the reality is in the Premier League, as far as I'm concerned anyway, and the injury stats do back this up and the sprinting stats back this up, never stopping means you never get any rest for your muscles, for your bodies. And therefore, I think not only do you get muscle injuries, David, and I'm not ignoring what you're saying, but also I think it means that you're more fatigued and you probably fly yourself into other tackles and other moments that you otherwise wouldn't, because you're fatigued and your brain and your body aren't quite working at the pace that they might be otherwise. And that's why you'll get more knock injuries as well. Just a little report there. Tottenham to start talks for Arno Calamuendo of Rennes, apparently. I'll check that out more after this and bring you more on that tomorrow morning. But yeah, I think we will notice an improvement in Tottenham's injury record under Thomas Frank compared to Ange Postecoglou. And I do think that's why Spurs didn't fully go for Iraola of Bournemouth, because his sprint stats were up there with Ange Postecoglou's as well. Guys, keep on. Thank you so much for watching. Do keep on this live stream. I'm going to be doing this for at least another 10 minutes or so. Really appreciate your support. Do press that like button if you haven't already. We're on 83 likes. Let's try and get up to 100 likes. And if you're not already a subscriber, please do press the subscribe button. Or if you're watching on TikTok, please do follow. Like I said, I'm going to be doing morning uploads of all the latest Tottenham and Premier League transfer news. And then where I can, most days, evening live streams. I did this one at 5:30. I'll probably try 6 o'clock tomorrow night so I can maybe get more of you as you're home from work. And do let me know what an ideal time would be. I do stand up most evenings. I got gigs, so I probably can't do it much later than 6. Otherwise, I would just do it at 7, which would probably suit everyone a bit better. But where I can, I will be doing live streams every evening, talking with you guys, giving you all a voice and discussing all the latest Premier League transfer news, always, of course, starting with my team, Tottenham Hotspur. We talked a bit about Eriksen earlier on, potentially coming back to Spurs as a rotational number 10. David Clark says I would play Eriksen in our veterans team. Stephen Larkin asks, are there any players that are not being talked about that you would like to see at Spurs? Well, the one that I really wanted was Ryan Cherki. I was gutted that Man City went for him, but I think it's a good example once again of how if Tottenham get a player over the line in terms of a signing, it's because about 8 clubs above us, both in the Premier League and in La Liga, and you can add Bayern Munich into that as well, they have decided not to bid for them. And we were interested in Ryan Cherki, but Manchester City just came in. And of course, you're going to go to Manchester City because they pay you the big wages, and realistically, they've got far more chance of winning the big trophies. And I do wonder, whether we're going to miss what one of the things that Ange was brilliant at was getting on the phone with some of these players and saying, the likes of Radu Dragusin or Lucas Bergvall, I know you've got bigger clubs than us interested, but you are going to get straight in our team, and I'm going to trust you. And I wonder if Thomas Frank will have quite the same powers of persuasion, because let's face it, Thomas Frank in his managerial career so far has not had the opportunity to talk to players who are kind of 50 or 60 million pound signings with big egos looking for the next big move. So it'll be interesting to see how he does on that sense. But yeah, Ryan Cherki was the one I was thinking about that I really liked and would have liked to have seen come to Spurs. Abe Delgado says, Mikey Moore looks puny. Can he handle starting in the Premier League? Well, I did mention earlier, I think he could do with some bulking up, and maybe a championship loan would suit that, but let's see what Thomas Frank thinks. Mark W., thank you for your comment, mate. You say, not giving you pelters, mate, but honestly, we need to forget the romance and need to ship out Son, and we don't need Eriksen. Players like Eze and Mbuemo are the future. I don't disagree with you, mate. I think there's possibly a world where you could have all of those players together. Use the experience of the likes of Sonny and Eriksen, but then bring in Eze and the likes of Mbuemo as well. I have to say, based on previous experience, you'd think we're probably likely only to get one kind of box fresh oven ready player through the door of an ilk of an Eze or Mbuemo. Although I'm saying that because we only got one in last year in Solanke. However, of course, we do have Champions League football this year, so that means the purse strings will be loosened a little bit. So maybe we could get two. I, for one, would love to see if we got Eze and Mbuemo, or Semenyo and Eze and Mbuemo, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? David Clark says, we're talking about the set piece coach coming. He's coming from Manchester United. That's right. Sai's going to go well, says Barnaby, can you wish me luck to find a home in the Netherlands? Yes. Good luck finding a home in the Netherlands. I'd love to live in Holland. I've been to Amsterdam a good few times. Oh my God, I would love to live there, although it does get mad cold in the winter. Marvin asks, too early to make predictions about next season. Just another report just coming in. Spurs have held talks over a deal for Copenhagen starlet Rooney Bargy. He's on quite a few clubs' lists. That has just come in this moment. Predictions for next season. My prediction for next season is that Manchester City will win the league and Tottenham will be there or thereabouts for either the League Cup or the FA Cup. That's the way I feel about that. And that Tottenham will be challenging the top 5. We'll be challenging. My prediction is I don't think necessarily we'll get off to a great start, but I think when it all starts to come together, we will start pushing for that top 5 place. That's how I feel about it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments for your predictions for next season. Not just Spurs, but who's going to win the main trophies. And in terms of Tottenham in the Champions League, I think we'll make it to the playoff round. I think you have to be in the top 8 to miss out on the playoff, round and get a bye through to the last 16. I think we'll make it through to the playoff round. Kieran Proper says, good afternoon, Barnaby. What's your one dream signing that has some possibility of happening this summer window? It's difficult, isn't it? Dream signing that I think could happen. Maybe Branthwaite. You know, a lot of people really rate Branthwaite, and there is some genuine talk that Tottenham are interested in him. So maybe Branthwaite. That is assuming that Romero is going to go. If not, then my dream signing, honestly, is Romero to stay and Mickey van der Ven's hamstrings to just have the most wonderful, lovely summer of rest and be in great shape for next season. Because I think Mickey van der Ven is our most important player. I really do. Wendy says on TikTok, don't blame Man City for Tottenham's shortcomings. Daniel Levy will not spend the cash. Well, Wendy, I understand where you're coming from, but I will also say that since 2019, if you look at the stats, Spurs are the third highest spenders in the Premier League. So it's not like we haven't spent money. It's just that we haven't always spent money on the right kind of players. But I'm confident that under Thomas Frank, Johan Lange, and with Don Fabio Paratici coming back in the next month or so, that we will continue to buy exciting, young, hungry players. Plush Teddy says, many people say that we didn't commit a bid for Brian Mbeumo. I think we did, or at least verbally did one, but because we heard that we gave Frank promises, I think a Mbeumo hijack with a high bid would fit that. Yeah, like I said, I think, you know, Man United are in a difficult position where they're trying not to spend too much on players at the moment. They're trying not to have their pants pulled down by other clubs like they have done previously. And if Tottenham really have bid £10 million more than Man United for an Mbuemo, then Mbuemo might be left in a difficult scenario where he may well want to join Man United because he supported them as a kid or for whatever reason. But if Tottenham are the only club willing to bid what Brentford wants, then in the end, he'll be left with a choice between Brentford and Tottenham, or Man United will have to go above and beyond what they want to. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Kaladiva's comment, I think this is to do with us talking about Vicario potentially leaving this summer, says, I hear Martinez is available. That's Emi Martinez. Now, I have to say, and you may not like this, guys, let me know how you feel, but Emi Martinez is, to me, an absolutely top-notch goalkeeper and leader. And I would take him over Vicario. But I don't foresee that happening. I really don't. Plush Teddy asked, did you know that Bale is still 10th for most expensive players under 17 years old? Yeah, I'm not surprised. We paid £5 million for him, didn't we? What else have we got in the comments here? PKD81, thanks for your comments. Many congratulations to Dejan Kulusevski, who's just got married to fellow Swedish footballer Eldina Armic. Yeah, congratulations. Tottenham did a cute social media post today where they talked about some exciting things that have happened to our players. James Maddison and his wife are having another set of twins. They've already got a set of twins and another child, so that'll be their fourth and fifth children. And Manos Solomon got married and Deki Kulusevski got married. So well played to all of you guys at Tottenham. Martin P says, I can imagine Thomas Frank will scrutinise Vic's footwork. He's had some excellent ball-playing keepers. Should Vicario be concerned for Kinski as first-team keeper? Well, I've said it many times. Kinski's footwork and his commanding of his box is far superior to Vicario's. But as far as I'm concerned at the moment, Vicario's shot stopping is miles ahead of Kinski's. Kinski's shot stopping will improve. He's very young, but at the moment, I think Vicario is just above him. I think Kinski will turn out to be an excellent goalkeeper. James Black, the voice of Spurs, has been in the comments. Sorry, it's probably taken me quite a while to get to these comments, James. He says, Barnaby, you okay? You seem a little subdued. And Justin Grierson replied, he's been ill. That's right, Blackie. Blackie is James Black's nickname. I've known James for years. Top lad and top Spurs content creator. Do follow him, James Black, the voice of Spurs, on Twitter if you don't already. But yes, I've been ill all weekend, James, and I'm struggling a bit at the moment. But as I've been telling everybody, I'm now going to be doing morning uploads, my usual morning uploads of all the transfer talk. And then in the evening, I'll be doing these live streams where I can talk to all you guys in the comments about the transfer rumours from around the Premier League, always starting with Spurs, of course. We were talking about training earlier. Walnut 1999 says Conte's training was also brutal. Players getting sick and collapsing, but there weren't so many injuries. At least that I remember. Yeah, but Conte being more pragmatic in terms of his style on the pitch meant there were a lot more rest. There was a lot more rest time for Spurs players. Whereas, as I mentioned earlier, Ange being always about we never stop. And I don't know if you watch Spurs this year, you'll have noticed that every single game we played, whenever there was a foul, we just took it straight away. There was literally no stopping. And I do think at the top level, at the elite level of the Premier League, you need your players to get some rest time, to take their breather, also to take in instructions from the sideline. Probably one of the reasons why. Sorry, I just have to do a weird thing on TikTok here to show them that I'm still alive. One of the reasons why Spurs kind of often showed a lack of leadership on the sides, because Ange had this thing that I think he kind of gathered over his time as a manager, where he didn't really want to shout at the players that much or tell them things on the side of the pitch. And I think sometimes players want to be told what to do. They want to be kind of given other ideas whilst they're playing. I think one of the reasons Ange didn't talk to them whilst he was on the side of the pitch is because he didn't want them to stop. So it's kind of like a vicious circle. That's kind of my point that I eventually got round to. Apologies, it took so long. What else have we got? Robert Yee says Mikey Moore looks like he's filling up in the under match of last. I don't know what that means. Sorry, mate. Christian Breidsdorf Pedersen, thank you for your comment. Says you should consider changing that photo behind you with one of Maradona in a Tottenham shirt from 1986. Honestly, mate, if they had a print of that, I would absolutely do it. I have been looking into other prints and stuff to cover my background space with, but I do think Diego Maradona, just as a footballer, in terms of his genius on the pitch, but also how he just enjoyed the nicer things in life, like the fun of life and sociability. He's kind of a man after my own heart. Don't get me wrong. Back in 1986, although I was too young to remember, obviously gutted that his Argentina team beat Spurs with the hand of God. Beat England with the hand of God. But I think if you look at some of those clips of Maradona, the most talented player of all time, probably, alongside Lionel Messi, I'd probably say. I'm definitely Messi over Ronaldo. I know that will probably piss off some of you, but Messi is a genius, and so was Diego Maradona. Daniel Baldy says, Barnaby, would you want a number 6? And if yes, which player for that position? Yeah, I guess so. I'd be interested to see whether Thomas Frank thinks Rodrigo Bentancur is a natural number 6 for him in the style that he likes to play. I think Frank will naturally play 2 double pivots, so our number 6 position will not be quite as absent as it has been under Ange Postecoglou. I think one of the things that we'll really notice as Tottenham fans that will be different under Thomas Frank compared to Ange Postecoglou is that there won't just be possibilities all the time for one pass to split us down the middle and for there to be absolutely nobody there. I think it's more likely we'll play a double pivot. I don't know who will get in that position. I mean, there have been links with Norgard from Brentford, so maybe him. Edison from Atalanta looks like a really good player, but Man United also interested in him. And of course, who knows who Don Fabio Sorry, I've been on the stream for an hour and I now can no longer talk. Don Fabio Paratici. Who knows who Don Fabio Paratici will have in the bottom of his little black book. So it'll be interesting to see. Deltspar says, I think it's that Spurs have the 3rd highest net spend, not total spend. They just haven't sold many players for high fees. That is true. To be fair, that is true. We haven't been as good a selling club in the last few years as we were in the early days under Pochettino, but I do expect that to change. I think we will start getting good money for players. And of course, we did get 100 million for Harry Kane, which was pure profit. Andy Ing 135 says we can probably expect 1 or 2 Scandinavian players in the future regarding Bargy, who we're interested in. Loyal and not overly expensive players. I agree, and I think the way it's worked with Lucas Bergvall will mean that I think we'd all be pretty happy for some more Scandinavian players to come in. We've had good luck with Scandinavian players down the years. Torsvet, of course, Bergvall, Stefan Iversen, I always loved when I was a kid. Øyvind Leonardsen didn't play maybe his best football at Spurs, but he was always great on Football Manager. Walnut 1999 says, with all these players having babies and getting married, Sonny should ask his dad again if he can have a girlfriend. In case you didn't know, Sonny's dad doesn't allow his son to have a girlfriend or any children whilst he's playing football. That's how much of a hard taskmaster he is. Although Cantab says Walnut 1999, he has a girlfriend now. I think there were some reports that there was a police report, wasn't there, about Sonny getting bribed, I think, over a fake pregnancy or something like that. Harvey and Onslow on the piss asked, do you ever get called Bananaby? Well, funny you should say that. When I was a kid, like by which I mean a baby, I loved bananas. And in fact, it was all I would eat. So yes, back then I did get called Bananaby. David Clark says, Maradona doesn't come close to the best player of all time. You're obviously too young to have seen the greatest player of all time in Pele, with Messi second and Maradona nowhere near. Pele was a great footballer, a great finisher, undoubtedly. James Madison is in my TikTok. I assume it's not the real James Madison, but if it is, hello, James, and thank you for supporting me. James Madison on TikTok says, Mbuemo to N17. So maybe you know something we don't, James Madison, but thank you for your comment. I really appreciate it. Going back to David's point about Maradona being nowhere near the best player of all time. Listen, I've watched a number of videos of Pele as well. Like, brilliant finisher, brilliant athlete, incredible vision. Obviously, one of the best bits of football all time is when he was running through from an angle on the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper expected him to try and touch it past him, and instead he dummied it went round the other side of the keeper and then just hit the finish wide from an acute angle. Like, he was a genius, but I don't think Pele was a player who could beat every single player, in one half of the pitch and then take it around the keeper and put it away like Maradona did. But also Pele, in terms of brand, I'm taking it away from on the football pitch here, but in terms of brand, Pele advertised Viagra, whereas Maradona was into more of the sociable drugs, which, I'm not advocating drug use by any means, but he was a fun time guy. Let's put it that way. Maradona was a fun time guy. Robert Yee says, if Messi wins one more World Cup, the argument ends. Some would argue Messi winning all level of Intercup says Messi far ahead of Ronaldo. I think the fact that Messi's won the World Cup and Ronaldo hasn't does put him ahead of him personally, but that is not to belittle how well Cristiano Ronaldo has done winning the Euros and a couple of Nations Leagues as well. Custy says George Best is the greatest all time. George Best is a brilliant, brilliant player, and also a keen fan on the sociability side of football too. Anyway, guys, listen, really enjoyed this stream. As I've said, I'm going to be trying to do these live streams every evening now around about 5:30 or 6 o'clock, 6:30 tomorrow. I'll probably aim for 6 o'clock, something like that. We'll be discussing all the day's Premier League transfer news, also any kind of in real time Spurs transfer news. I'm very excited about some of the reports coming out, reports that Spurs are interested in Xavi Simons. There are reports, like I said this morning, Basuma might be moving to Saudi Arabia. Richarlison and Son may be also interesting Saudi Arabia. Jose Mourinho at Fenerbahce is interested in Sonny. That's one for me. Whereas if it's Fenerbahce, you want more than 30 million euros. I want them to be paying far more if that's going to happen. And then also other Premier League transfer talk. Ekitike, interesting Man United. Semenyo, also interesting Man United. Victor Osimhen may be going to Liverpool. Barcola from PSG, also interesting Liverpool. And of course, all the Gyökeres talk. Man United and South Woolwich Arsenal interested in him. Thanks so much for your support, guys. If you haven't already, please do press like on this video. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will be back with another live stream tomorrow night, and do check out my upload tomorrow morning as well. We'll be talking about all the latest Premier League transfer talk. Have a great evening, guys, and thanks so much for your support. Cheers.